So this n, this particular property, this n, whatever we are talking about, this any property, it can be any scalar that you are looking for. Okay, any scalar, any vector, any tensor that you're looking for. Eta is the intensive property, while n is the extensive property, which is associated with the mass, and this is associated without the mass. Right? Say suppose if you talk about momentum, say mv. So if this is an extensive property which corresponds to the n, so the velocity will be the intensive property which corresponds to eta. Initially, I just required this much of clarity. Then I will come back to this term, and this term individually. Okay. Yeah. So we define that any geometry you have, say you have a sheep, you have water, any place. Say suppose this sea water is there. So what we do, we take a differential volume element in this water. A very small differential volume element, we call this as a dV. Okay, sometimes V is written as cross just to avoid confusion between velocity and volume, right? So just be aware of that. So now this particular part we call as a control volume. Why? Because if I can develop the theory around a control volume, which is a very small differential cube, if I can really come up with a theory which is applicable for this dV, I can really have a kind of nozzle, ship, or anything just by integrating this over the entire control volume, right? The entire definition, entire governing equation doesn't change. Only the boundaries that change. That's the beauty of this sort of formulation. So whenever you get into the operations of 3D domain, right? So you choose a differential volume element. You have all your mathematics, all your physical principles embedded inside that, and then you integrate over the geometry. That's the recipe. Okay. For that, we need to have, now we are going to indulge into, in this particular course, conservation of mass, conservation of linear momentum, conservation of angular momentum. Energy we will not do. These three will be complicated enough. If we are able to control these three in our mind, we should be very happy. We should feel like, elated that, we have done very well. Correct? So what is conservation of mass? Let us keep a very simple interpretation, dm by dt equal to 0. This will be applicable until or unless you are going into what? You are going into either a radioactive domain, or you are looking for something, at the speed of light, where, some mass is getting converted to energy, right? So other than that, this is a very safe bet for any engineering device, especially like, most of the engineering devices that we use right today. Of course, 10 years down the line, you see quantum technologies are coming in a huge way. But then whatever simple technologies that we use for that, dm by dt works very well, pretty well. Then comes the conservation of linear momentum, or the conservation of momentum, right? Which talks about F equal to mass into acceleration, right? F equal to m into dv by dt. So this combines together. So where this is the moment and this is the force. So this is the variation with the torque, and this is the variation with the velocity, right? So these three things we will try to understand. It's a very simple formulation, but what happens if I have a 3D geometry that is brought in front of me? How do I attack the problem? Attack the same problem. Like, say, suppose when you were talking about, say, car is moving at a velocity of, say, suppose 10 meters per second. Now, when you do that, you don't consider the entire car. you consider the car to be a point object, which is the error that you incur in terms of all the calculation that you do in terms of like, the losses in terms of drags and all these things. So this becomes very much questionable when you consider everything to be point mass, which is the most modus operandi of all of you up to this point. Now we are going to emphasize on that, correct? So how do I do that? As I was discussing, that you take a set of properties like mass, momentum, energy, okay, which is the extensive property initially, and then you define a property beta, which is the per unit mass. This is the intensive part. So you talk about one part which is extensive, which is with the mass, and one part which is intensive, which is without the mass, that you also call as beta. Okay. Next, what you do, you define a very arbitrary control volume. I just define a kind of very arbitrary control volume. This is a kind of, people generally call a kind of, this is the utopian potato, right? Utopian potato shape. You can take any shape. Now what you do, you assume that this has migrated like this after some point of time. So that was the initial configuration. Okay, and this is the final configuration. So in a sense, you may see that this part, which is defined as 1 here, which is left out, whereas this part, okay, which is defined as 2 here, this 2, that has been inducted in due to the motion. So you go for a very arbitrary control volume. You say that there is a motion, and due to that motion, there is a change that has taken place. So time t equal to t, it is CV, and time t equal to delta t. What happens? CV, this 1 has gone and 2 has been added. Okay, I'm going very slow just to make sure that from the elementary level you understand this without much of problem. So once that happens, so you can write, see, any property at t plus delta t is equal to that property at t plus delta t minus 1 at t plus delta t plus 2 at t plus delta t. Okay. So initially I started with this, then I left out this part at t plus delta t, and I have added this part at t plus delta t. Question is there. So what exactly is the change? Right now, by definition, anything dB by dt, what is that? B at t plus delta t minus bt. This is fundamental definition. B at t divided by delta t, right? This is limit delta t tends to 0, correct? Is the fundamental definition of derivative, right? So we are just taking that fundamental derivation of derivative in the form of the partial differential equation. Only time dependent factor. Now what is this t plus delta t? Now I know t plus delta t, B system is what? I know this. So what I do, I just, place everything down at t plus delta t, what I calculated previously, minus t divided by delta t. So essentially, if I can calculate this part for a control volume, I'm through. Right now, if you simplify this, if you take this term, and this term, it comes out to this. So if you just add these three, it comes out to be this. And if you take this one, it will come out to be this. If you take this one, it will come out to be that. I'm just, rearranging the whole thing. Okay. So by definition, what it says, this particular term, the change of B within CV, change of B within CV CV is this entire thing, which did not change. Only the boundaries did change, right? So this particular terms tell you the change of B within the CV. Whereas these two terms tells you, this term tells you amount of B flowing out through a control surface. And this is amount flowing through a control, because there is a minus sign, that means it is flowing in. This is flowing out through a control surface, one. This is flowing in through a control surface. So essentially you can think about, as this boundary is slowly moving towards this is coming in. Whereas as this boundary is slowly moving towards this is going out, right? So two is a representation of flowing out, and one is a representation of coming in. Now you put delta T tends to 0, so that you get what? In everywhere you enforce this delta T tends to 0, so that this part becomes what? This part becomes, the first part becomes, the left hand side becomes what? dBcs by delta T, which we have previously studied as, this is nothing but, since there is a motion that is taking place, this is nothing but what? Del B by del T plus V dot gradient of B. So this is essentially the substantial derivative that we are talking about, or the total, or the spatial derivative, right? Or the Eulerian derivative that we are talking about. This is also called the material derivative, where you have a local part and you have a convective part. Any question up to this point? Is it becoming a little bit lucid now? Any question up to this point? Okay. Now let me come. Now this is the simplified term. Now let me come one by one. This. So we understand this is the change in the control volume. This is the flux that is flowing out. This is the flux that is coming in. Okay. So let us calculate how do we calculate these three things. So first is the first term, right hand side, this one. This particular term has been calculated where? Has been calculated here. What is this? B T plus delta T, B CV T plus delta T minus BT divided by T, which is dBCV by dt. This is nothing but what? Say, suppose rho is the density. That means kg per meter cube. That means mass per unit volume. Right? So beta into rho is what? It's basically B by V. B into mass divided by V. Correct? Now this into dV for a control volume over a volume integral, right? So then you see that this is where I'm considering how B is changing inside the control volume with time. Essentially that has been written here. So what is the change of B with respect to time? What is the material change of B with respect to time? It is nothing but d dt of this triple integral is written as control volume like this. It's a volume integral beta rho dV. dV is for the control volume. Beta rho is B per unit volume. Okay. Now per unit volume over the entire volume, you take a volume integral, and the change with respect to time is essentially your dB by dt. Is it clear? Is it clear? All of you are supposed to submit the assignment, right? Have you submitted?
Yes,
how many of them submitted, Vinod?
Not everyone, sir. Few are left. I mean, around
who
10,
said yes? Who said yes, sir? Submitted. I'm unable to see your face. Yeah, please tell me who said yes. I'm not going to torture you. Don't worry.
Govind.
So have you,
sir.
Is it clear, Govindo, this part?
Yes, sir. Clear, sir.
Clear? एकदम चकाचक दिख रहा है?
Yes, sir.
So now next,
Yes, sir.
let us move to these two terms. These two terms treatment remains to be the same. That's the reason why I asked you to go for the assignment, so that when I explain, it becomes very as you grow up. No, it is not good that every step I do like this before you do it. It's always good that you do it. Then any confusion, I clear it out. So now what I need to do, so this is the change of the property B in the control volume, the entire CD. Right. However, these two are associated with the flux. What is happening through the motrice? Correct. So how do I go about it? So first what I do, I choose a control surface, CS. What is that? Say suppose if I have a, suppose I just go down a little bit to show you. Say suppose this is an arbitrary geometry. And I say that this CS, this particular CS, what has been drawn here, no? This is infinite number of these are repeated in order to make that control surface. Whereas if I have dV volume, this infinite number of this dV is making this total number of this, right? So I choose an arbitrary surface like that. I choose an arbitrary surface like that, where I choose an arbitrary differential area, which is delta A. And through which I try to calculate the flux that is going out. Now, moment I define this delta A, based on its orientation, there is a normal of that area. And fluxes are always calculated normal to the area. However, you may just appreciate that. That this normal is not necessarily be the direction of the flow that is going out. So for the sake of generality, you have defined the angle between N and V as theta. So now if you want to know what is the mass out through this area, it is rho dm. So for this control volume, what is the mass out? Dm out is what? Similarly, we'll calculate dm in, that is rho into dv, right? Where dv is my what? dv is my volume. Now what is dv? What is delta v? Delta v is the area, this delta A. So you can consider a cylinder delta A and then a length delta L, which is nothing but the velocity v into delta t. So exactly that's what you are doing. So you say that this is nothing but this delta v is nothing but, say suppose if you have a cylinder which has a base like this and length is delta L, this is delta A. So delta A dot delta L is your volume. You people have calculated a lot of such volumes in vector analysis. Now delta ln is what? Is equal to V delta t cos theta. Now this, if you put together, that comes out to be delta A dot V delta t cos theta. So this has become this delta V. Now if you replace this delta V into this equation back, so what happens? Delta B out, any property that is out, that is any property delta B out will be what? Beta into delta M out. This delta M out I have just calculated. I just plug it back. So I get beta rho V cos theta delta T delta theta. Delta T delta A. Okay, I get a very simple algebraic expression. So the thing that is going out, that is the total, is nothing but a collection of many such surfaces, infinite such surfaces. So I do a kind of surface integral out of it, of dB out, and B out I have just calculated it to be this. Now the parameter that I need to calculate is this by delta t. So I divide this by delta t and then enforce limit delta t tends to 0, because that's where the differential thing will come out. This gives me the total volume out is BV B rho V cos theta delta A, which also I can write B rho V dot M dA. So B out is this. Putting similar arguments, I can also give B in. B in will come out to be with a minus sign, same. Okay. Now, if you think about, say, suppose this is the surface, right? is the control surface. So through one surface it has come out, through the other surface it has come in, right? So essentially, when you are taking everything together for this particular equation, sorry, if you're taking everything together, what it comes out? It comes out to be, this is the total flux in and out, and this is the change in the control volume, which summarizes to this equation, and this is called the famous Reynolds transport theorem. Why this is important, you will immediately realize as I show you example. Up to this point, everything is clear. Everybody understood how is it coming, how this v dot n is coming, how beta rho dv is coming, how this is surface integral, how this is volume integral, and how this is substantial derivative. We have taken everything separately. See, from here, you will get Hooke's law. Okay, you will get Navier-Stokes equations. Okay, you will get Stokes equation. You will get everything related to motion mechanics. Everything you will get if you have understood this very, very clearly. Is it clear? Any doubt? No, at least you say no.
It's fine.
Great, great. Now, once you are into this set, so let us see what we derived. Say any arbitrary volume, control volume. In that we have defined a differential volume element, differential area, and we say that any property, extensive property B, change of any extensive property B, which is local as well as convected change, is nothing but, you know, the volume integral, rate of change of the volume integral with respect to rho b dv, and the surface integral of this term. So this is the rate of increase of the property in the control volume. And this is the rate of efflux of the property across the control volume boundary. If I add these two, I'm going to get this. What is the utility? The first utility, you know, say suppose B is mass. Suppose B is equal to mass. Okay, what will be beta?
Density.
So if B is equal to mass, what will be B small b?
Sir, 1.
1. Very nice. So this will also be 1, right? So what will be dB by dm by dt? What do you expect dm by dt to be?
0.
dm by dt will be 0, right? So this left hand side will become 0. What will become this? See, this is 1, right? So this will become integral of
Rho d.
del rho by del t, volume integral del rho by del t dv, right? And this will become what? Surface integral of rho v dot n dA, right? Because B is equal to 1. Exactly, you see, this has been done. Del rho by del t dv, this is 0, and rho v dot n dA. Now I can use divergence theorem. This we have studied, that rho v dot n dA, g dot n dA is the divergence of this particular term, right? So del dot g. So what you can do, if you enforce divergence theorem here, Gauss divergence theorem, so this surface integral can be converted to a volume integral. So del rho by del t dv, del dot rho v dv equal to 0. That means volume integral of both now has become dv dv. So del rho by del t del of rho v equal into dv equal to 0. This can be simplified to what? Del rho by del t del dot rho v equal to 0. This is nothing but the mass conservation equation for any 3D microfluidic flow. In fact, this is the mass conservation for 3D flow, any 3D flow. Okay. Any aircraft, any car, anything. So the one that we are writing is So we are writing is del rho by del T plus del dot rho V is equal to 0. Okay, this is called the mass conservation. If I expand, how will it look like? Can anybody tell me del rho by del T plus how will it look like this term?
Del rho v by dx plus del rho v by del y plus del rho w by del z.
Yes.
Equal
So
to zero.
suppose in this one, rho equal to constant. What type of flow is that?
Incompressible flow.
Incompressible flow, right? So if rho is constant, what will be the fate of the equation? Right? What is this? Anybody? See, if rho is constant,
Divergence.
this
Divergence
is
of v
equal to 0. Rho is constant, you can take out rho of divergence of v equal to 0, right? That means divergence of v equal to 0, right?
0.
So this is the mass conservation equation for an incompressible flow. For a compressible flow, you have to make use of this, where density is changing with respect to time and space. Clear? Is it okay? Nice. So another interpretation of this divergence theorem, you may see that. See, whatever fluxes are going out of these phases, correct? That is nothing but the total change of this property in the entire volume. Right? So suppose you have a ball which is filled with water and you are pressing it. So there is a change of volume of the ball. But when the moment you press, what happens through these pores, the water will come out. So if I just add whatever water has come out, that will be equal to the change of the volume. That is the physical significance of this divergence theorem, that if you accumulate all the fluxes through the area, that will be now nothing but the volumetric change of that property inside the volume. Okay. So now up to this point, what we did, this is in the domain of mechanics, dynamics, kinematics, kinetics. What are we doing here? Mechanics, dynamics, kinematics, kinetics. What are we doing here?
Kinematics, I guess, because we are not studying the.
We are doing
Cause
conservation
of
of mass, no? It's a natural law, right? So what is this? Conservation of mass we are exploring now. So this will be either mechanics or dynamics, right? Am I correct? All of you are
Yes.
with me, right? Now let us do some kinematics. Now I'm not really going for a mass in the beginning. What I see, I take a control volume, which is this is dx, say this is dy, and say this is dz. Okay. Then I choose a property which is rho u. What is this? It is mass into velocity divided by volume, right? So this you can also call as momentum concentration, right? Or you can tell what? This is also a mass flux, right? Correct? Mass per unit area per unit time. Am I correct? This is also a mass flux through the different areas. Am I correct? M.
Yes.
You know, this per unit area, per unit time. There is a rate, right? So the mass flow rate in and out, you know, what we do a Taylor series expansion. What is a mass flow rate? See, you have studied about velocity. Okay. Now, say suppose you want to measure a velocity. Say suppose there is a microfluidic channel, okay, and there are fluid flow that is taking place in a microfluidic channel. Now, when there is a fluid flow, I want to know what is the velocity. How do you obtain? How do you experimentally obtain the velocity? Any idea? Have you done any experiment in measuring the velocity? Say suppose there is a fluid flow. You have a pipe. There is a fluid flow that is taking place, and you want to know what is the average velocity of that. How do you do that? Anybody has any idea?
We can measure the volume flow rate.
How do you measure that? How do you do that?
Like we
measure the quantity of fluid flowing out of a pipe per unit time.
So what you do, you take a cylinder, you take a stopwatch, and you allow the fluid to flow in the cylinder. It should be a measuring cylinder, right? In that measuring cylinder, you keep collecting the fluid, like say suppose water, and then you have a stopwatch. You first press the stopwatch to see, say suppose 30 seconds, how much fluid you collect. From there, you get what? Volume per unit time, right? Whatever is the volume that you have accumulated in the cylindrical measuring cylinder divided by time. This particular flow rate is called the Q cap, which is called the volumetric flow rate. This is experimentally you can measure. From this volumetric flow rate, how do I get the average velocity? Say suppose this is a pipe, okay, and this pipe has a cross-sectional area of, this cross-sectional area is say suppose A. So how do I get the velocity here? How do I get the average velocity from here?
V into A equal to volumetric flow rate.
So volumetric flow rate divided by the cross-sectional area of the pipe gives me the average velocity. Right? Now, how do I get the mass flow rate? Which is defined by m dot.
Multiplying.
Sorry. So volumetric flow rate divided by multiplied by the density, right? Because this is equal to mass by volume. This is volume by time. So this is equal to mass by time. Am I correct? So if you get a volumetric flow rate, if you multiply with density, what you get? You get mass flow rate. Okay. If you get a volumetric flow rate, if you divide this by area, you get the average velocity. Okay. Now, what are we doing here? So what are we doing here? We are arbitrarily selecting a differential volume element, and in that differential volume element, the mass flow rate in or out of each phase using Taylor series expansion around the center point. That's what we are performing. Okay. So what is the first thing? So I take a property rho u, right? That is the center of the right phase. Okay. So and then what I do? Sorry, I do a Taylor series expansion. How do I do the Taylor series expansion? So what is Taylor series expansion? Say suppose f x plus h is what? Fx plus h
plus h into f dash x plus h square by 2.
X, yeah, plus
f
h square by 2 factorial f double dash x, right? Plus
yes,
h cube by 3 factorial.
3 factorial f
Right.
triple
F
dash x.
triple dash x. What are the conditions here? Condition is that fx is a continuous function, right?
Yes, sir. Continuous differential function.
Right. So that's what continuous function, and it is also differentiable, right? So these are the two conditions. So we may expect that a fluid flow, all the velocities are continuous and they are differentiable. So in that sense, what I do, first I take this rho u and I do a Taylor series expansion. So essentially you can see that around this center, right center, I am doing a kind of Taylor series expansion. This is the center of the right phase. And I just retain the first two terms. Okay. So here you may see that for each and every phase. So this is rho u. Okay. Now why you are doing with respect to x? Because this is the x direction. In this, you will see this will be done within the y direction, right? And in this, you will find it will be done, this will be z, this will be y, and this will be x. I'm just retaining the first term because other terms will be, I'm assuming that small. Correct? So this is the then here in the previous slide, what we observed? In the previous slide, we observed that sorry, what is my mass flow rate? What we have observed, what is my mass flow rate? It is rho into volume, right? That means dx, dy, dz divided by t, right? So here, if you focus on rho u into dy dz, what does it mean? So rho is the density, u dy dz is what? Volume, differential volume divided by in the x direction divided by time. So essentially, this is nothing but rho u dy dz is nothing but the mass flow rate through the right phase of the control volume. So this is the outgoing mass and this is the incoming mass. So this is the incoming mass. This is the incoming mass. This is the outgoing mass. This is the incoming mass. This is the outgoing mass. I'm just doing a kind of Taylor series across all the faces of a cube. Yeah. Summation of all the mass flow rates, if you do, right? All the mass flow rates that you did in the cube. So whatever is in, you added, whatever is out, you have added, and plug into the conservation of mass equation that in a control volume, del rho by del t dv is the change of mass, which is nothing but summation of m in minus summation of m out. If you just plug them in, you again recover the same equation that you have obtained from the Reynolds transport theorem, which is what? Which is the mass conservation equation. Clear? Any doubt up to this point? So we started with kinematical argument here, and we finally ended up into a mass conservation equation. Right? This we did. Now this can be Cartesian coordinate. This can be into cylindrical coordinate. Whichever way you like, it can be done. It can be in spherical coordinate. Different types of situations can be created, which are given. Say suppose next comes, say suppose you want to convert this to a from Cartesian coordinate to cylindrical coordinate. This looks like, say suppose if you have a sphere in which you want to really know how the flow is taking place, right? So you have to use a coordinate system which is r, theta, phi. We should not have any apprehension or confidence in getting into those. Say suppose I have a cylinder. I have to interpret this equation in terms of r, theta, z, right? Whereas it is a kind of like, plane Poiseuille flow, x, y, z, right? So I go for a kind of like, Cartesian coordinate system. So I should not have any apprehension in transforming these equations into different coordinate systems. How easily I can do, I'm just showing you. So essentially, if you look at this equation, this describes all. This describes this describes that, this describes this. So when you are representing in this particular form, it actually is, the notation is such a beautiful notation that, it embeds cylindrical coordinate, Cartesian coordinate, everything. So if you just derive the Cartesian coordinate equation And from there, if you do a very simple transformation like this, you will be able to, I'm just going to tell you the trick, and you will see that it will be absolutely easy for you to interpret how the things will be done here. Correct? What is the trick? The trick is this. Let me just, draw first the whole thing for you. Why is it coming? So, say suppose you imagine there is a cylinder. Okay. Now, in that cylinder, so suppose this is the center line. Suppose this is the line, and this is your, say suppose, coordinate. Correct. Now, you can think about the boundary. This is essentially you have R. And any point R, the connectivity with the boundary is theta. Right? So you just remember that. So let me go back to the main point. Just let me take it down a little bit for the time. Okay, so this is my cylinder. I have placed my cylinder. So you can imagine that the cylinder is here, right? This is my cylinder. This is an infinite pipe, right? Something like that. Now in that, what I have done, I have made my, this is my Cartesian coordinate system. So in the cylinder, a particular point, right? How do I define? The vertical is Z, right? And this is the radius of the cylinder. And this radius is making a theta angle with X. Okay. So just have a clear view of the whole thing, that if this is XYZ, if this is a cylinder whose radius is R, and that R is making an angle theta. So if I make a transformation, X equal to what? In terms of R and theta, what should I write? X equal to
R cos theta.
If R is a vector, it will be R cos theta. Y equal to
R sin
this
theta.
is theta, this is 90 degree R sin theta. And Z equal to Z, right? So exactly that is written here. Okay. Now, say the same thing. I imagine that this is my coordinate system and there is a sphere. And this particular point is on the surface of the sphere. This particular point is on the surface of the cylinder. This point is on the surface of the sphere. And then what I do here, what I did, I connected the projection of this point in the XY plane, that I connected as the R vector. But here what I do, I directly connect this point to the center point to make the R vector. And then I take a projection to the XY plane. Right? Now this R makes an angle theta with Z, right? And with the plane, this is 90 minus theta. Whereas when I project it on top of this, this makes a phi angle with X and, 90 minus phi angle with Y. So in this sort of situation, what will be my Z?
R cos theta.
Very nice, R cos theta. Now, if this is R cos theta, what will be this projection?
R sin theta.
So this projection will be R sin theta. Let me write down for 2 times. Okay, now if this is R sin theta, in the X, what will be the projection?
R sin theta cos phi.
This will be cos phi, right? And what will be my projection in the Y direction?
R sin theta sin phi.
So this is exactly written here for you. This is the recipe of transformation. If you remember this, you need not really worry about any transformation that you require. You can do in the exam hall. It is just about having a practice. And then, so this is the forward transformation, and just using trigonometry, you can look at all the backward transformations like this. So just make a practice. Again, I will tell you to submit an assignment if making all these practices and then submit it. And then what you do, you take a variable which is chi, which is a function of x, y, z, which becomes psi It's a function of r theta and z. This is the transformation that you are giving. Just we are doing this, very frequently in the vector tensor. We did that. So then what will be my del chi by del x? Okay, which is at y and z, constant y and z. So you see that del r by del x, del psi by del r, del theta by del x, del psi by del theta, del z by del x, del theta by del z. So x, and you have got del psi by del r, del psi by del theta, del psi by del z. So chi is the variable which is a function of x, y, z. Psi is the variable which is a function of r theta z. So you are essentially giving this transformation. What is the rule? You use this chain rule in order to really make this transformation possible. So you have del chi by del x, you have to get the del chi by del y, and you have to get the del chi by del z. In that process, you have to give the transformation. Correct? So in this situation, if I put del x, what will happen? What should I get? Del x should be what? Del r by del chi, okay, into del psi of what? Sorry, del r by del x into del psi of what? Del psi by del r, right? So I leave this is my operator, and I just derive this part once. If I derive this one, I will be able to derive all the other ones. Like, these are all will become trivial. It will be very, very simple. So how do I get del r by del x? What is my r? R equal to root over x square plus y square, right? What will be my del r by del x? Anybody?
X by root over x square plus y square.
Yes. So what is that?
Cos theta.
That is cos theta, right? So root over x, you can understand. This is x, right? That is y, right? So root over x square plus y square is what? X by root over x square plus y square, right? So some people have curly brown hair based by hypotenuse, correct? X by root over x square plus y square. Am I correct? Am I interpreting it correctly? This vector can be written as root over x square plus y square, right? Which is the r vector, basically. So that will become cos theta, right? What will be delta theta by delta x? So theta is equal to tan inverse y by x, right? So delta theta by delta x will become what? You will see it will become sin theta by r. So and what will be del z by del x? Del z by del x will be what? Because z is not a function of x, right? So that will become 0. So in that process, if you just take del r by del y, it will be del r by del y. Del theta by del y will be this. Del z by del y will be this, right? Similarly, del r by del z will be this. Del theta by del z will be this. Del r by del z, you can see it is no z. Del theta by del z, you see no z, it will be 0, but z is there, so this will be 1. So if in this equation, you just bring in these parameters, so essentially you will end up getting what? You will end up getting this equation. If you just plug in all these del x parameter, this is with u, this is with v, this is with w, just simply map it. So z will remain z. You will find here 1 by r components will come for theta, and for psi 1 by r components will come, and in that process you will get the entire equation. It's a simple transformation you need to do. Similarly, in the spherical coordinate also, this is in the spherical coordinate, perhaps this is in the this is r theta z. This is also in the spherical coordinate. So I give you the assignment that you also convert it to you also submit a continuity conservation of mass equation in the spherical coordinate, cylindrical coordinate, and follow this entire process in order to convert to first this equation, and there will be a spherical coordinate equation. You will get where? You will get in the BSL, Bird Stewart Lightfoot. Okay, in the appendix, all the equations are there. Okay, from there you get the conservation of mass for a sphere in a spherical coordinate. So first derive all these things just the way from these you derive all the components for this, and then apply it to this Cartesian coordinate equation in order to get the spherical coordinate equation. Is that clear? And it need not be submitted on 2nd of February. You can submit on 4th February. Is that fine with all of you? Yes, somebody says yes to bolo. Okay. Now comes the another interesting part, which is the conservation of momentum. Right? Now what should I do? Again, I go back to the Reynolds transport theorem. Now what will be B here for me?
Velocity.
Is it velocity, capital B? What will be my capital B?
No, capital B will be mass into velocity.
Mass into velocity, right? And what will be my beta?
Just velocity.
Correct. So this will be my extensive property. And this will be my intensive property, right? Is it clear? And then what I have, I know that from Newton's second law, force is equal to mass into acceleration. So I bring in first how the, see from here what I get the rate of change of momentum. Okay, so essentially this gives me what? This gives me this part. Whereas Newton say that force is proportional to what? This rate of change of momentum, which is the mass into acceleration. Let us do an exercise here. Okay. It's a very important exercise. Why? Yeah, it's a very important exercise. Say V, velocity vector, which is a function of, say, suppose V is a function of what? V is a function of, say, X, Y, Z, and T, right? So what will be my dV? Right? Plus V dot del V, correct? What is this? Can anybody tell me what is the unit of this? Am I writing correctly? This one?
It should be dV by dt, sir.
Yeah. See, if V is my property, if I am taking a substantial derivative around dV by dt, so it can be written del V by del T plus V dot gradient of V, right? What is the unit of this?
Meter per second square.
Now, what is this property called?
Acceleration.
This is acceleration, right? What is the unit of this?
Meter per second square.
So what is this property?
Acceleration too, but
This
that's
is
different campus.
So now you tell me what is this acceleration and what is this acceleration?
The first one is due to the time dependence, and second one is due to convect. And second
So
one is
this is called the local acceleration. And this part is called either convective or advective acceleration. Okay, this happens due to either convection or advection. Okay, so you can literally see dV by dt, this particular variable has two components. One is an acceleration, convective. So this is nothing but what? This is nothing but rate of change of momentum. How do I make it momentum? I just multiply this by rho. Okay, now rho, and then what I do, I go for a kind of control volume CV integration. It's very important to really, integration of what? integration rho, and then what I do, I have to go for a dv, right? You need to really know the variables very carefully. So dv by dt is a measure of acceleration. One is local acceleration and the other is the convective acceleration. So now let us see that when I have B as mv, okay, when I have B as mv, so I have put B as mv. So this has become like, so just, this beta is equal to B, right? There's some, mixing is there. So just, accommodate that. So what will be B for me? B is my V, right? Which is written here. B is also written here as V, whereas capital V is MV. Correct? So as force equal to mass into acceleration, force is equal to what? I just take these two terms like that, right? I come here later. First, let me see. Should I do it first or later? Okay, let us go ahead. The lecture doesn't allow me to do the way I want to do. Anyways, now I have two components. One is this acceleration. One is this acceleration component as a whole, okay, which is the right hand side here, and the other component is my force component here, right? You just look at here from there. I think this will be much easier to visualize for all of you. I just don't maximize it. So according to this mass into acceleration is this dv by dt that I have already told in the previous slide. I mean, while I was explaining, that will be equal to what? That will be equal to all the forces. Now forces are divided into two parts. One is the body force. What are the examples of body forces? Can anybody tell me? Body force is a force that is dependent on gravity, right? Apart from gravity, any other force? See, bigger is the mass, bigger is the force. Any other force that you can think about, which is a body force?
Buoyancy.
Buoyancy is a body force. Then, apart from any gravitational influence, any body force? क्या हो गया? इतना साइलेंस क्यों है? इतना इंटेलिजेंट लोग बैठे हुए हैं, कुछ तो बताओ. No body force. Any force that increases with mass, bigger is the mass. Centrifugal force, right?
Yes.
Electromagnetic force, magnetic force, electric field force. These are all body forces. Bigger is the body, more is the force. Correct? So now, since it's a body force, how do you interpret? You say this is mass per unit volume. Okay. And then what you do, you put acceleration, mass into acceleration gives you the force, and then you dv. So rho g dv is gravity. So control volume rho g dv is the mass into acceleration. So that is your body force. This is the way. So this will just change for m omega square r dv for a centrifugal force. We will do electric field force. How is it interpreted, right? So there are two types of forces. Generally, all the forces are divided into two major categories. One is the force, which is the body force, and one is the force, which is the surface force. Examples of surface forces, say suppose all sorts of stresses, surface tension, like friction, all these are surface forces. Now, in a body force, you talk about the control volume, because with mass it is increasing. In case of surface force, with surface it is increasing. Correct? So what you do, you define the surface force that in a control surface, if sigma is the stress, that means force per unit area, you take a dot product with the n so that you get the normal components of them all together, and then multiply force per unit area, multiply with the, and then you keep adding for all the areas that are there in the surface. That gives you the total surface force. Okay, we'll come back to this. We'll explore this in a much more detail as we progress. So you can see, like, this initial notation is coming, and we have done this operation. Sigma ij, by the way, sigma ij is what? It's a scalar, vector, or a tensor?
Vector, sir.
Sigma ij is a vector.
Oh, no, sigma I is tensor. Second order tensor.
It's a second order tensor, right? Now, if I take a dot product with n, what will happen?
We'll get a vector.
We'll get a vector, right? You remember those initial notations. Anyway, we'll do it. So all the surface forces, if I just take a surface integral of that and then multiply with the differential area for the entire surface area, this is the total surface force. So what Newton's law is telling, total force is total gravitational force, total surface forces like pressure, viscous, and other surface forces. So this is the total F. So with this, we have taken care of this F and mass into acceleration, and then we join together. So what is summation of F? This is the body force, this is the surface force, and right hand side, this is the local acceleration, and this is the convective acceleration. This is coming straight away from what? I have just replaced in the Reynolds transport theorem. This is rho v is capital B, and here I have given only V. Now, this is a surface integral, this is a surface integral. I can straight away apply Gauss's divergence theorem to convert this surface integral to volume integral, this surface integral to volume integral. Okay, and then I can plug back into my Reynolds transport theorem, and the entire Newton law. Basically, I just plug back in, and then this I enforce to 0. So entire thing become volume integral, and that if I just take this out, so this part is called the Cauchy's equation of motion. There is no generalization. This is the most generic form of equation of motion. There is no generalization. Where v is the velocity, this is the local acceleration, this is the convective acceleration, this is the body force, this is the divergence of the surface force. Okay. Now, say just if you expand this and use some vector identities, you may see that this is the local acceleration, this is the convective acceleration, this is the total acceleration. Mass into acceleration is equal to the summation of the body forces and summation. This here it is gravity, here it is stresses. So summation of the gravitational and summation of the body forces and the surface forces. So your equation of motion simplifies to this. Any questions up to this point? Last 4 दिन से जो पापड़ बेल रहे थे, to arrive these two equations. First is this equation, and we had previously the mass conservation equation, which is the basis of any fluid problem, basis of any microfluidic problem. Any questions up to this point? Yes, no. So what am I writing?
Sir, Navier-Stokes is a special equation from this Cauchy equation. I mean, it is a special form of Cauchy's equation.
Yes, when you take this, I am going to come there. Navier-Stokes is not the most generic form of equation.
Okay, sir.
Cauchy's equation of motion is the most here. From here, the deviation will start. From here only, I can go to Hooke's law as well as to Navier-Stokes equation. I am not yet committed that whether I'm going to deal with solid, whether I'm going to deal with viscoelastic. Okay, I have not brought in any material description up to this point. It is only I'm dealing with an object. Whether the object is a liquid, solid, gas, I have not defined. Now I am going to define. Because you will immediately understand the limitation of this equation. Then you need assumptions. By the way, the Newton's law, second law of motion is this particular is this is a phenomenological equation. Okay. This F is ma. Force is proportional to rate of change of momentum. This is a phenomenological equation. That means this is not a rule. That's why it fails. This is followed by a number of systems with some order of accuracy. You have done 20,000 experiments. From there, you have obtained that O. For some cases, this is true, right? But this is not a fundamental law of nature. This is followed by many. So that's why it is called a kind of phenomenological. I can say that why it is only mass into acceleration, not acceleration square, not acceleration cube. Actually, those sort of things are obtained. Those sort of things are seen. The violation of this law is seen when you deal with electrons. Say, suppose if you have a massless particle. Okay, so in those sort of places, you will suddenly see that these laws are not valid. So that's why this is not a universal law. This is a phenomenological law. Phenomenological law means phenomenology. The word comes. I observe multiple phenomena, and then from there, can you tell me in which direction the sun rises in the morning?
East.
Sure. How many days in a year it rises exactly in the east?
2 days.
So then why do you say that it rises in the east? If you say sun rises in the eastern side, that's a more correct statement, right?
Yes.
This is what is all about a phenomenological law. Until or unless you dig deep, you are unable to get what's going on there. So it hardly rises in the east. Sometimes it is northeast, sometimes it is southeast, right? But then we say that it always rises in the east. Correct? It always sets in the west, right? But that is not the truth. It's a phenomenological behavior that you're talking about. Same here. Correct. Now let me see this particular equation. What is this equation? Right. Let me just write down this particular equation. So it's clear, right? What I said, that Navier-Stokes is a type of Cauchy's equation, right? So rho dV by dt is equal to what? We wrote what? Rho g. G is a vector, and then we have divergence of sigma, right? So if I expand, how will it look like? Rho del u by del t plus u del u by del x plus v del u by del y plus w del w by del u by del z del u by del z. Okay, plus is equal to what? Rho gx, and then what will be the terms? Can anybody tell me? What is divergence of sigma? Is del xi, okay, then del y j, then del z k, right? This is going to be with what?
Sigma 1 1.
Sigma xy, sigma
Sigma
xz,
X.
sigma yx, sigma yy, sigma yz, and sigma zx, sigma zy, sigma zz, right? So you are going to take a what? So this will be del sigma xx. So in the x direction, so this will go like this, and that will go like that, right? So this is a divergence of sigma ij, right? So how do you go about? How do you do it in an inertial notation? Del xi, right? Dot ei dot sigma mn em
Diadic EM.
dyadic en, right? So delta im del sigma mn divided by
Del
del
xi.
xi, right? So I equal to m. So this becomes, and then I have what? Here I have
En.
another term, which is en, right? So del sigma mn del xm, right? En. So this will be repeated here. Okay, all the I components will be repeated in X, all the J component repeated in Y. So I request you to do an assignment here also in this line. Just expand this in the vector form. So how many equations there? This particular thing represents how many equations?
3, sir.
3 equations, right? V is a vector, right? So this is the U, So that will be an X momentum. Then there'll be a V, that may be a Y momentum. And then there'll be a Z, that will be the Z momentum. W, there'll be a Z momentum. So there are three equations. How many unknowns are there? What are the things that you do not know? Say U, V, W. Clear? These three you do not know. Do you know all these 9? No.
No, sir.
So 9 plus 3. How many
12.
are there? Total in three equations, and how many unknowns are there? So let me just count. I think there is a count here. Also, in the sigma ij, you know that the sigma ij will be symmetric. So instead of 9, it is counted 6. Why? Because you know that this stress tensors, sigma xx, sigma xy equal to sigma yx, right? Sigma yy, sigma xz, sigma xz equal to sigma zx, right? And then this is yx, yz, right? So this will be zy and sigma zz, right? So in that, generally people take these to be equal, these three things to be equal. They are symmetric matrix. This is considered as a symmetric matrix, right? But I'll come to that. There is a trick to that also. How come they become symmetric? But even if you consider symmetric, then how many stresses you do not know? Total 3 normal you do not know, and 3 tangential you do not know. Total 6 you do not know. You do not know the density, and you also do not know 3 independent velocities, right? So if I consider mass balance to be one equation and 3 momentum balance to be one equation, 3 momentum balance to be 3 equations. So I have total 4 equations and I have 10 unknowns. Even if when I'm considering sigma to be the stress to be a kind of a symmetric stress. So is it possible to solve the equation? Yes, no. Do you have a unique solution to the equation? 4 equations, 10 unknowns.
No, sir. We need 10 equations for that.
So what is the solution? So first what you do, you divide this stress into 2 parts. One is the pressure. I will come back to what is pressure. And what is the other part you call as a deviatoric stress, a part which doesn't vary with the flow, and a part which is a function of the flow. So this part is not a function of the flow. This part is called the thermodynamic pressure. And this part is called the deviatoric part, which is the viscous part. So first you divide what? So what is sigma? Sigma is equal to P, sigma ij is equal to P into an identity matrix minus tau plus minus Pi plus tau ij, where tau ij is the deviatoric. So I separate out pressure first. Then what I do, I say that this tau part, this deviatoric part is what? This tau ij is 2 mu Eij. So I correlate this tau ij with the strain rate, which is Eij, which comes out to be like this. So I express this deviatoric stress in terms of U, V, and W. And this is the genius of Newton's law of viscosity. You will not believe 150 years almost. The entire mechanics, were unable to explain many of the engineering practices before Newton suggested this part, okay, where you correlate the total stress to the pressure and the deviatoric stress. This deviatoric stress has a correlation. This is what is called the Newton's law of viscosity. Now to plug back in the whole thing, what you get dV by dt. If you plug this matrix at the bottom, you get mu del square V rho g. Now here you may see that you have 4 equations. How many unknowns? V1, 2, 3, U, V, W. Pressure, you have got 2 unknowns here. Density, you already know, you have taken density to be constant. You have 4 equations and 4 now unknowns. Now this has a unique solution, which is called the Navier-Stokes equation. Rather, This is called the Navier-Stokes equations. This S should not be missed out. So you start with Cauchy's equation of motion. Cauchy's equation of motion, in Cauchy's equation of motion, again, you do a number of experiments. You know, why did this thing came up? Because, you know, most of the industrial fluid is water-based fluid. You know, when industrial revolution started, the fluids were mostly water-based. Now, you know, fluids are of different type. Now, it is the major focus is all the non-Newtonian fluids. But then, you know, when the engineering started until late, and 20th century, you know, last 20 years only we have started really dealing with all the complex fluids. But up to that point, most of the fluids were treated as Newtonian fluid. Why? Because the major fluid that you deal in Earth is water. Now with water, if you do a number of experiments near room temperature, you know, it follows this particular law where stress is proportional to the strain rate. It is directly proportional to the strain rate. And that strain rate can be written as this, you know, nothing to worry, you know, everything we are going to really have control over each and every parameter. I'm just right now giving you the overview. We will have exact control over each and every term, nothing to fear. Just do whatever I'm telling. So now next assignment will be yours, will be to start with Cauchy's equation. Okay, plug in Newton's law and then prove that the Navier-Stokes equations. The incompressible Navier-Stokes equations. This you should submit by next Friday. So what are the 4 equations? You have 3 vector UVW3 equations. This is one single equation. It's a scalar equation. And how many 4 unknowns? UVW and pressure. How do they look like? They look like this. If I expand them, they look like this. Essentially, you will get these equations when you convert it. Then you have to use the vector form in order to get these things. So this is the X momentum. This is the Y momentum. This is the Z momentum. Okay. So up to this point, any questions? Any question you have? Any question? Everybody understood everything?
Yes, I got the essence of it.
Correct. So work on it. Okay. So we'll continue with the discussion in the next class. So I am until I think slide number 49, right? So we'll discuss about these types of Navier-Stokes and some of the things in Friday class. I think by Friday we'll be able to finish most of the fluid part. Yeah. Okay. When is your midsem exam, by the way?
First week of March.
First week of March. Still there is a lot of time. Good. Okay. So we'll finish a lot of, I mean, perhaps most of the theory part will finish by then. Anyways, thank you so much for today. And we'll meet on Wednesday with the presentations. Any clarity on the presentations?
Yes, sir. Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, actually, I mailed you regarding my fracture, sir. So can
you have to present. Fracture what? No, it's a collarbone injury, right?
Yes, sir. Actually, I could not do anything in the last few days, sir.
So your team member is doing, no?
Yes, sir.
I also had a collarbone injury. Don't worry too much. It will be a little bit painful, but no, nothing to worry. You know, you are in your room, right?
Yes, sir.
What is